Your background's in marketing?
No.
Because I was like, you went to study theology. Where did the marketing come from?
I originally, out of high school, I went to school. When I was in Ohio, I went to school at this place called the Recording Workshop.
Oh, okay.
And that was sound engineering.
Okay.
And,
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And besides this, I've never done anything with that degree. And then when I moved back here, I opened a furniture store, my own, for about a year.
Where?
That was behind the Pier 1 Imports on Erie Boulevard.
There was a furniture store there?
There was
I don't even remember the piano stores right by there.
So there is there's a building that sits back there, and there's a gym, like equipment place on top.
Yeah.
And the bottom and behind that, there was like an empty space. It was a shitty furniture store. If you know the telephone pole signs you see that's like Queen mattress that was me back in the day. All right. So it was a shitty, awful thing. But I was 21 at the time.
And you needed a job.
And I had a job, and like the guy I was working with, it's a very long story, but long story short, we wound up opening a furniture store. We had it for a year.
Yeah.
My business partner was a horrible human being, and I was 21 and didn't know any better. And we were talking about theology just before we started. Like, part of my growing up was also being taught in churches that it's like God wants you to be blessed. So that means that if you want to have a mansion, God's going to give you a mansion. And and he's not just going to you're not going to wake up one day and there's going to be keys on your, dining room table. It's like this new house,
right? But
it's going to be through these avenues. Right. And so when the possibility to open a furniture store came about, I was like, this is God. God wants me to be a millionaire, and he's going to do it through me opening this really shitty
furniture store.
Now, in reality, what was happening was that wasn't anything to do with spirituality. It was just the way of something, things happen.
Part of growing up.
Right. I knew this person, and they, and that was that. But the spiritual aspect of it was, my brother at the time, my older brother, was like, you shouldn't do this. My parents at the time were like, you shouldn't do this. My pastor at the time was like, you shouldn't do this.
And you did it anyway.
And I was like, no, that's just God testing me. God wants me to be rich one day through this really crappy furniture store. And it wasn't the case. So.
But you got some good life lessons out of it, right?
I did. I learned, at 21 years old, there was definitely a lot of life lessons learned through that horrific place. But it is what it is. It is, we make decisions. It's part of life. Things happen.
Yeah, definitely. But I think the key is you learn from it.
Yes, without a doubt. Yeah. And some of those lessons I've repeated later on in life, but yeah, definitely learned from it, for sure. Yeah. And, one of the things, it's funny how these are connected. Towards the end of having that, there was this, his name's Scott Schultz. He's really like a phenomenal martial artist, but Brazilian jiu-jitsu teacher. Mm-hmm. And he had come into our furniture store, and just this weird circumstance. At the time, I was really into UFC. I love UFC.
Do you? Yeah, I have almost a secret crush on UFC.
Really? I started getting back into it recently during quarantine. I'm watching the fights on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So Scott came in, and I think I was wearing back then the Affliction t-shirts were really cool. So I was wearing one of those, and he had this, I don't know what you call it, school to teach Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. And he said, if you're interested, he needed a couch. And he was like, if you want, we could trade. I'll teach you for a year for free, and you'll give me this couch. Yeah. I was like, okay. I'm really glad I did. I did it for a year. I really enjoyed it. But Scott was a white guy, but practicing Buddhism. Mm-hmm. And I did his afternoon class, and it was always a bunch of cops that were in there. And,
really?
Yeah, a lot of cops in there. And he would always play this really weird flute music, during it.
Zen.
Yeah, exactly. Sound. Right. He was not he used to fight, but he was not the over aggressive, let me show you how to rip somebody's neck off,
Yeah.
But he and I would always have conversations because, Christian and a practicing Buddhist. Mm-hmm. And he turned me onto this book, and I believe the title was called practicing Buddha, practicing Christ.
Oh, it's like Buddha, like Christ.
Like
by
Buddha, like Christ.
Thich Nhat
Yes.
Hanh.
Yeah.
He's actually my uncle's master.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my oldest uncle, Ngoc Huynh,
Okay.
he wanted to be a monk.
Okay.
And he studied at the monastery, and he went up to Hue, and that's where he met
Wow.
Thich Nhat Hanh.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he learned from him, but at that point, Thich Nhat Hanh was very active,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in a lot of social justice. So he wasn't always around,
Yeah.
but like his second in command
yeah.
basically taught my uncle.
That's wild.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love his teachings. I think his teachings are great because one thing I really love about his teachings is the fact that it's practical. You know, I mean, he explains it, but it's everyday life things
Yeah.
that you can use. You know,
Right.
it's not like completely far-fetched where it's like
Right.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I'm a big fan. He's in
Yeah.
he's in Vietnam now, and I mean, like, he's health-wise he hasn't been really well,
Okay.
but he's still alive.
Yeah.
But I think he's much slower now. He doesn't go out as much and things like that. You know, his branch, there's a place called Blue Cliff Monastery. It's in the Catskills.
Oh,
he
really?
opened that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's got 2 locations. No, is it 3 locations in the States? He's got the one in the Catskills. He's got
Okay.
another one somewhere down south. And then the other one, 3. The third one is in France.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Plum
wild.
Village is in France.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, it's a small world. That's such a connection. That's crazy.
You should go check out Blue Cliff.
Yeah, I
It's
will.
beautiful because it's in the Catskills. It's like you go all the way up in the mountains. And it's right up there. And there's practicing Buddhist monks, and
Okay.
they study there, they practice there, and they
Yeah.
have like free sit-ins I can't remember if it's on Saturdays or Sundays, but you can just come in and take part, and they'll
That's cool.
they'll talk about something, and then they open up for discussion.
Yeah.
And everyone takes part.
Huh.
And I mean, like, they do a lot of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's cool. It was hard for my son because he can't sit still.
Yeah.
so
Right. Yeah.
we went there and he's just like, "Can we go now? Can we go now?" Can we go?" And when they do these walks in silence, right? My son's like, so.
A friend of mine that I worked with at Cafe Kubal, he was only there for a little bit, but his name is John McDaniels.
Okay.
And
Which one did he work at? The one over in...
I was the wholesale manager and marketing manager. So I worked out of the main office.
Okay.
And then John was the delivery driver at the time. So he was also out of the main office.
Oh, okay.
And so he delivered like to our cafes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And John is very much into like just experiencing different things, like experimenting with different things. And so he is vegan. Not that he's experimenting with that, but he's been a vegan for a while.
Right.
And then he was like trying like different fasting. Like he would like only eat like 3 days a week at one point.
Oh my gosh.
Like just all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And he did this retreat. I forget where it was. I believe it was somewhere in New York State, like upstate New York. But it was a 30-day retreat, but there was like no talking for those 30 days.
Right. I
Yeah.
wonder if that's at Blue Cliff. They
I
do
wonder.
silent meditation quite a bit.
Okay.
So they do various types of retreats, and they have
Yeah.
these great ones. They're for young
Okay.
people,
Yeah.
just to get together and meditate, and
Yeah.
it's very cool. I haven't been. It's just mostly because I have a family,
Right.
and to do a retreat, it's abandoning your child and your husband for a little bit.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So it's just a lot of scheduling, but yeah, I've been wanting to, I just haven't had a chance. But I think silence is something, I think in our culture, American culture, we don't practice well with.
Correct.
We don't have the patience for it. And I think what's been really interesting is like with this whole COVID thing, where you're home, and then some people are just kind of going crazy, like, what the hell am I going to do with myself, like, and it's just funny because people, I've talked to friends and family who, they've picked up different skills or hobbies, they're reading a lot more, they're spending a ton of time with their family. It's just like, I think in life it's really important sometimes just to slow down and breathe and just, relax.
Yeah.
And that's something I think American culture, we don't do enough of. We're always on the go, always making money, always busy with work, go all the time. And I think sometimes it can backfire.
Yeah, it can. And I feel like I agree, especially with COVID. During quarantine, we slowed down like crazy. My wife has been working from home. She's still 95% of the time working from home. I wasn't able to do podcasts anymore, right? I was doing some remotely, but they weren't really working, so we didn't really do much. And I was working from home for about a month, but the rest of the time I was pretty much in the office. But I really wasn't doing a lot for this. We weren't eating out hardly ever. Which
is great sometimes. Right. It's good to cook, right?
It was great. I've really got my pizza recipe down. I got that down. I was like doing sourdoughs and a lot. And I was taking care of our lawn like never before. And I started looking into gardening, and that led to composting. And then that led to us getting chickens.
Oh, that's so cool. How many chickens do you have?
So we have 8.
Where do you live?
I live in the city.
You live in the city?
So it's super illegal to have chickens in the city.
That's what I was wondering. Are you out in Fabius or?
No, we're right on the north side. And so I was looking into it, and I wound up reaching out to Brady Faith Farms, and because they're in the south side, and so I called her up and I was like, listen, I know you probably have special, permits and whatever, but what was it like? Because I want to get some chickens for the backyard. And she said, I have plenty of friends who that live in the city who have chickens, and no one's ever said anything to them. So I was like, all right, we'll just go for it. If the city comes after me, I'll just say, listen,
And of course, you're announcing it to them now.
Right, exactly. Now they know. I'll just say, listen, do you know who I am? No.
Do you have a big enough yard?
We have a big yard. When we bought our house, there was an empty lot next to us. The house that was there, this home headquarters company bought it to rehab it. They couldn't, so they tore it down, and then they didn't rebuild it.
Oh.
And so I was lucky enough to buy that lot from them for $1.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal.
Yeah. They just wanted to get rid of it because it was nothing for them. They were just paying to have the lawn cut and the sidewalk
and maintaining
shoveled.
All the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So I called them and I said, do you want to sell it? And it worked out. It was like the one time that I was quiet that it benefited me because she said, well, how much do you want to, how much are you willing to pay for it? And I said, well, how much do you want to get for it?
Right.
And she said, $1. I just have to get rid of it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I bought it. And so now we have this really big yard. For the north side.
Yeah.
And so it's great. I spent like a month building the coop and fenced in a little run.
Fenced it,
Yeah. And they have a whole, we have chicken wires, like a roof covering for them on the outside, so that way, hawks and stuff don't come down. But it's been great. They're about 2 months old, and they're all Rhode Island Reds. They're only for eggs. But yeah, it's been, I won't say it's been fun because the chickens don't really do anything.
But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of cleanup work.
It is. So my routine with them is basically let them out at like 6 or 6:30. Just open their door. Their food and the water is already outside. They all come down and eat and drink. And then I open up their, get in there with like a little access door and clean out their poop from the night before and put it in a bucket and throw it in our composter. And that's it. Honestly.
Really?
And then at like 8 o'clock, 8:30, they go inside on their own. I go outside, close their door, and that's it.
Oh.
But so there's not a heck of a lot. I mean,
but it's a lot of poop.
Yeah, it's a lot of poop.
That's what I meant by
that's the worst part. Yeah, that's the worst part. But apparently their poop is great for
your vegetables.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so our ground, nobody's ever grown anything there. And I was just talking to somebody who was telling me the lead levels in Syracuse and the ground are so bad that you really shouldn't or can't grow directly into the dirt. You need to have like a raised bed.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Neither did I. I haven't investigated it. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what this person told me. So, but they're a smart person, so it's true. And
well, you have enough poop
I
in
know.
the gravel to help.
Yeah, I have enough poop.
How much lead's in poop?
Yeah. Hopefully not a lot. Yeah. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. But you shouldn't, you should not treat them as pets and like pick them up and pet them and hang out with them. They carry salmonella like on their bodies.
Right.
So anytime we're around them, we immediately like go inside and wash our hands. Yeah. So, but yeah, should be pretty interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah. 8 chickens.
Yeah. My uncle, my youngest uncle, has tons of animals, and he lives in the city, but not in Syracuse. So I'm actually from Nebraska.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's always taking in stray animals too, all the time.
Yeah.
But he had chickens, pigeons, every single bird you can imagine he's had in his backyard.
Wow.
And stuff, and it's just wild.
Yeah.
But he's the best person to, if some animal is injured, he would totally help it recover.
That's cool.
And he's so good at it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
My wife's dad is a veterinarian, and they're originally from Boonville, so about an hour and a half north.
Yeah.
And a really small town, but yeah, he's a big animal vet is what he specializes in. And so it's kind of, it's kind of like following in the family footsteps. I make fun of myself all the time, and I post pictures on Facebook and say, I'm a farmer now.
Somewhat.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, we did it. And during quarantine, I kept saying like, this is great. I'm going to start slowing down now. I'm not going to do as much. And my wife, I feel so bad for her because now that quarantine is over, I haven't slowed down. If anything, I'm doing maybe more. Actually, we are doing more. We're getting ready to start a coffee company at the end of September.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it'll be a small thing. We're not going to advertise it in Syracuse.
So are you planning to distribute the coffee beans?
Or? Yeah. So basically, I'm buying them from a coffee roaster. It's our packaging. It's our name. It's our brand. I'm going to have them online for sale. And we're just going to run Facebook ads in other parts of the country. Because the last thing Syracuse needs is another coffee company. and so we're doing that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so if anything, I've added that along with it. So I've added a coffee company and 8 chickens. So
okay.
Yeah.
That's not really slowing down much.
It's not at all. Not at all. Did you slow down a lot during quarantine? I mean, how was it for you?
I did. I actually went home to my mom's for like almost 2 months.
Oh, wow. Where's she from?
Nebraska. Yeah. So we were in Nebraska for about 2 months, and really also we went out because one of my cousins passed away. Oh. And we went out for the funeral. Okay. So of course we were planning just to drive in and drive out.
Yeah.
We just during that time it was, we didn't want to fly.
Yeah.
So we packed very little, just like a day or two's worth of clothes.
Yeah.
We got there, and immediately after the funeral, New York State shut down. And, at work, we were both told, you're working from home from now on. And then my mom said, well, what's the sense of going back to New York? And Nebraska at the time, the numbers were hardly much, right?
Yeah.
So my mom's like, just stay here. There's no point in you going back to New York. You're working remote. You can do it online,
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, fine. But I think what was great about it, too, was I really got a chance to spend a lot of time with my parents because I haven't really lived at home since I was 18.
Okay.
I mean, pretty much like I went off to college and then I got a job and I never lived at home since. So it was a nice time to be with my mom, also to really work on her recipes.
Yeah.
So we worked on a lot of dishes, and she just, my mom is the type of person, and I feel like a lot of moms are like this, a pinch of this, a dash of this, and, just throw this in. And they make it sound so easy, but when I'm making it, it never, ever tastes like hers, right? So I always know I'm doing something wrong. And so when I was working with her, I saw these little nuances that she didn't speak out loud to me about. She just does it. It's like, oh, Mom, why'd you take that off the stove and then put it back on the stove? Oh, because if you do it this way, the meat would be blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, gee, thanks for telling me. No wonder mine always turned out really dry, So there's like all these little steps that she would never mention. And then being with her for 2 months really, I got a chance to see a lot of little things that I was missing in her cooking. So that helped a lot. And then, my parents got to spend a lot of time with my son, which they don't get to as much. And make fun of my husband. Like that's her joy in life, I think. She picks on him all the time. I mean, he's Italian. So, there's all these little things that she'll make fun of him. And he's gotten to know my parents so well, and he just adores them. Yeah. And I think in the beginning, for me, when I was younger, it was always about, my culture is so important to me. And so it was always very aware of, preserving the culture. I mean, like, we're all of us kids, we're born here or, came when we were babies. But the traditions are so significant to us that we want to keep it, maintain it. So I think like my parents growing up, they were always like, you have to marry, a Vietnamese man. You must marry a Vietnamese man, and it became such a just annoying, nagging thing. And I think, as I became an adult, I never really, I dated a few Asian men, but otherwise I dated people from various backgrounds. And I think at, marrying age, quote unquote, my parents were like, are you going to get married? Have you found someone? Do you want us to set you up and things like that? And it's not uncommon for a lot of Asian families to set their kids up with their friends' kids and things like that. And I was like, no, I'm fine, and I think I was really hesitant because to introduce my husband at the, now to my parents because he wasn't Asian. And there was just this fear of my parents being so heartbroken, and that he's not going to want our kids to speak Vietnamese or learn Vietnamese or practice the culture and things like that. So it took me a while to come to a realization that it's, people who aren't from your culture can practice your culture too. And, I think the most important thing is that, as long as they respect your values and your traditions, then that is key. That's like the most important thing. And then when you really think about it, it's not a cultural thing anymore. It just becomes a human being thing. Right? Because if you're both Caucasians and you have different values, it's going to clash. Right? So it's finding common grounds and finding, just being respectful.
Right. That's so interesting. I've never thought about it this way until you were just talking about that. But like I grew up thinking, being told, like there's a Bible verse, don't be unequally yoked. And so, and it's, from what I remember, I don't think it's talking specifically to marriage, but I was always taught like you have to marry a Christian woman. You have to marry some. And my wife, Rebecca, at the time, she grew up in a Christian home. They were, I don't know, not Episcopalian, one of the Protestant, things.
Lutherans?
Right. Something like that. Right. But she was agnostic. And even though I wasn't like going to church and really practicing my faith at the time when we met, it was just one of those things that was like ingrained,
in your mind, right? Yeah.
And so we both had holdups when we first started dating. And mine was that she wasn't a Christian, and hers was that I smoked cigarettes. And so I wound up quitting cigarettes, like cold turkey. And eventually she wound up becoming a Christian, or at least saying that she was. So, but like it was the same thing. Like I was thinking to myself, like my sister, my brother, I have a brother, a sister-in-law, and a sister that are all pastors. And I was thinking to myself, like, how in the hell am I going to introduce, not just introduce, but like say, hey, we're in a kind of serious relationship. By the way, she doesn't believe that there's a God. Like I knew that wasn't going to go over well.
Right.
And so, yeah, just really interesting, the kind of, similarities. Yeah. I have to restart the cameras real quick.
Oh.
Just because they have a 30-minute time limit.
Oh, they do.
On their recording. Which is kind of a good thing because that means that they're less expensive just from a tax purpose. But, yeah. There's That's why I'm looking for like a paid intern or
Oh, are you?
assistant. Yeah.
You're looking for a paid intern.
So just somebody that I can pay like a couple $100 a month to come in here when I do the podcast and basically do that portion of it.
Well, so are you interested? So there's a person I know. She's actually an illustration major, but her interest is animation. But she's very good with devices and technology and things like that.
Yeah.
But I know that she's my husband's student. She's from China.
Okay.
She's very talented, but right now, it's hard for even an American to find a job, let alone foreign students.
Yeah.
And so she's just been looking for jobs left and right, and she can't find a job to
Yeah.
stay. So she needs to find a job so she can stay.
Yeah.
Would you be interested?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's really smart. She's funny, and her work is really cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her stuff is really cool. I mean, she wants to go into animation, but it's not like movies are
Yeah.
doing well at the moment.
Yeah. I could probably, because we have an employee now. She's treated as a contractor, but I'm sure we could figure it out if she needed. Like,
yeah,
because
I think for her, it's like for her to stay in this country, she has to have a job, and it doesn't have to be a full-time job, but it has to be like a job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the employer has to fill out the paperwork and say yes, I'm hiring her.
Right.
But I mean, I can hook you guys up. You can
that'd be
meet
great.
her and see if you like her or not, and go from there.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's so funny. My husband, he teaches illustration at SU, and he's a cartoonist.
Oh wow.
He's what's funny is that he's kind of got this gathering of foreign students who just kind of follow him. Like, if he's teaching a certain class, they're in, And then at one point, he just had all these people from China viewing his site, right? Because you can see where they're coming from. And so what happened that year was that he told me, some of his foreign students they don't really open up, and they don't really talk much, and they're a bit shy about the language and how they have a thick accent and things like that. And so I think I said to him, I was like, why don't you just invite them over for dinner? Like they can come over for dinner, we can chit chat, it'll help them open up. And I'm here, I'm Asian, they can feel a little more relaxed, right? Because he loves helping his students just get to the next level. Yeah. And in order to do that, they have to communicate with him, and he felt like there was just this wall, right? So we invited a handful, I think we invited like 10 or 12 students to our house for dinner. And it was for Christmas. It was for Christmas. It was our big Christmas Eve. We usually do a big Christmas Eve and a small Christmas Day. Okay. So they came over for Christmas Eve dinner. And are you Italian? Yeah. Yeah. So you know how Italians do the feast of seven fishes and things. So we do that as well. And they came over, and it was fantastic because they were like so thrilled that we invited them to our home, and they just opened up and just talked about everything, right? And from there on, all of a sudden his views from China skyrocketed. So they must have told all their friends back home, hey, if you're going to study abroad and you're coming to SU, make sure you sign up for this guy's class.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool. So he's got and I think he loves all his students, but I think he always takes that extra step to help them more if they need it. Yeah. And so now we have a ton of these international students who are like, Frank, I need a job. Can you hook me up with someone, or do you know someone who's hiring? And
that's
so
great.
We've just been trying to with certain students and what they're good at, we've been trying to connect them with people.
That's awesome.
So
yeah. I feel like there's definitely, I am not connected to it whatsoever, so I can't really have an opinion on this, but I'm going to. And there's so many students that come from not just different parts of the country, but especially for SU from all over the world. Yeah. And I don't know what there is up at SU, but especially during COVID times, I'd imagine it's got to be pretty scary to be up here. And I don't know if any organizations that kind of work to connect them, or I'm sure there's a lot of stuff at SU, but just outside of the whole university that work to connect them with people and get them involved in projects. And
I think that's something in the Syracuse community we can do better with. Yeah. I feel over the years, I know that there's been a lot more interaction between the university and the city, especially when Nancy Cantor was in. Yeah. But now I feel like there's still more work to do, right? Right. Because when you have a pool of students from all over the states, from all over the country. They're young. They have great ideas. They're excited. You know, they can contribute. I think if you tap into that market, it just makes our community thrive.
For sure.
You know, like, and, you know, there's always people complaining, oh, there's nothing to do in Syracuse. I don't want to stay in Syracuse. Or even like kids who grow up here. They're like, I'm not staying here.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like it's another way to recruit folks to see what our city has.
Yes.
And, you know, there's great things we have here. And it's just a matter of like explaining to them and showing them.
Right.
You know, so.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting when I was at Kubal last year. There was some business class, and there was a student who needed to do like a internship at a local business, local company in Syracuse, and so she chose us.
Kubal.
Yeah, and it was pretty. It was great. I was able to like kind of lead that program with her, and she helped out for the marketing and the social media. And I was just fascinated. It was like, your parents live where, you know, like, to me, I never had that like really go away to college experience.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, your parents sent you here, you know, like, what do they think about Cafe Kubal, you know? But it was just, it was just wild to be able to like kind of, and she was from Connecticut, and it was like, all right, well, what do you see that we should do? Like, how should our marketing, how should our social media accounts be different? What, you know, should we offer something else in the cafes? And it was just really interesting to get that different perspective.
Yeah.
But especially like considering like the growth of Syracuse. A good friend of mine I just had beers with the other night, who he's originally from Buffalo. He's lived in Syracuse off and on for years, and he's back in Syracuse. But he was just in Buffalo a couple years ago running a food truck and a restaurant out there. And just Tuesday we had beers at Talking Cursive. And he's been back in Syracuse since, I think, maybe December or January. And to hear him talk about his frustrations with how much Syracuse doesn't, like, could do but doesn't, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
You know, because when you're kind of connected and involved in, you know, especially like the restaurant community, you just kind of go with the flow.
The flow, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And there's ideas I've had of like, oh, we could do a food truck pop up there, or on a late Friday night, or do something here. But to hear him, who's been in Buffalo, where it's just this insane scene compared to us.
It's a bigger city too, right?
Yeah, it's a much bigger city. Just us expanding into Eat Local New York, and then on Instagram going and following restaurants all over the state and seeing what exists in Buffalo and Rochester.
Right.
It's pretty intense to see like the growth that those cities have in their food scene compared to us.
Right.
Yeah.
I always feel like Syracuse, we're always like the last to get on the bandwagon.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
Things would be happening in Rochester or Buffalo, and then like we'll do it like
Right.
3 or 4 years later.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are we just not risk takers, or I don't know what takes us so long compared to other upstate cities sometimes.
I don't know what it is either. I mean, I won't say it's like an appreciation. Like, I won't say like we're so connected to our past, because I'm sure that there's plenty of other cities like Buffalo and Rochester connected to their past. But, yeah, I don't know exactly what it is that makes us so far behind the times. But we are.
It's the snow.
It may be, but then Buffalo gets
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I've always wondered, because we love to go to Rochester quite a bit. My uncle lives there, so we go visit him, and he's also a chef. So
cool.
I've been visiting him for, my husband calls it my ninja training, because he's been in the business for like 30 years.
Yeah.
So he's been just showing me like ways to do things,
That's
ways
cool.
to save costs, ways to, make things better or change things and stuff like that. We go to Rochester quite a bit, and then, we also go to Albany, and we go to Buffalo as well. And we'll see things going on there. And we're like, why don't we have this? Why don't we have this?
Right.
So.
Yeah. I mean, we just got a barcade for the first time, and then they got shut down.
And the state just said no.
It's kind of screwed up what happened with them, because a restaurant in Albany blew them in.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if this is supposed to be public, but it's gonna be. So they had opened. They had reached out to the state and said, listen, we have arcade games, but we were distancing them. We're putting sanitizing wipes right next to all of them. There's stools, so they have to sit down. Like, we're walking through everybody through
And the state told them no, I'm assuming?
The state told them it's fine.
Oh, the state told them it was fine?
The state for 3 Live soft openings, they had said it's okay. You're taking these precautions. They're distanced. They have to sit down. Good job.
Right.
Do your thing. The night that their first night, like open, they were open, and they got a call from somebody at the restaurant saying like, hey, are your arcade games turned on to play? And they were like, yeah, come on down. And they said, well, actually, we own a barcade in Albany, and the state told us that we couldn't open up and that we couldn't have the arcade games because of COVID. And so they said, oh, well, the state told us that we could. And so they got off the phone, and that restaurant immediately called the state and said, there's a restaurant in Syracuse that has their arcade games turned on.
That is so uncool.
And so somebody from the state called the 3 Lives like right after and said, you have to shut your arcade games down immediately.
Oh, that's so uncool.
That's a story I heard. I believe that's true because the person, is connected and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, isn't that crazy?
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Speaking of which, have you been to Mr. Chow in Buffalo?
No, so I used to work in Buffalo. But I had a terrible job, and so I really
strings of terrible jobs.
Yeah, I did. But I really did. I lived in Syracuse and worked in Buffalo. I'd go out there. So
you're commuting every day.
I'd stay at an Airbnb or a hotel, and so, but I worked like 8 to 10 every day, and so my food consumption
8 to 10 every day.
Yeah.
What were you doing?
I was the regional director for Metro Mattress for their Buffalo
You
area.
worked those crazy hours?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was awful. And then you would just be on call all the time.
Did they pay you well?
Yeah, I got paid well, but I did. But I had to the hotel or the Airbnb was on my dime. But it was a very well-paying job. They covered a lot of expenses. I met my wife. We met at the end of October, and in mid-November, I got that promotion. So. Oh my goodness. And so we stayed together through that. But so my food consumption in Buffalo was really pizzerias and Tim Hortons was pretty much in Five Guys.
I feel like they're really thriving in their food scene.
They are.
Yeah, they're taking risks. They're putting in different things, new stuff. I mean, and they have a growing refugee immigrant community too.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
okay.
they have a handful of Burmese restaurants, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, they really do have some great restaurants out there and huge restaurants. I never knew how many Thin Man Brewery. I always mention them because I didn't know that Thin Man, this beer that I've had at these festivals and I really love, was in Buffalo.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so, I mean, and a lot of the restaurants that are local independent restaurants, their Instagram accounts have got tens of thousands of followers on them. I'll summarize the differences between Rochester and Buffalo and Syracuse food scene in this one story.
Okay.
We do everything for restaurants for free at Eat Local. So unless you're a paid marketing account, everything's for free. So they can join our card for free. When they join the card, we do photo shoots for them for free, videos.
Really?
Everything's free for the restaurant.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And
you can make money off that, right?
I can. But it is hard, and I don't really want to be in that race for it,
Right?
Because there are a lot of great food photographers and stuff like that in Syracuse. And a lot of great video production companies in Syracuse. And so everything we do for them is free. And we don't go out and there are some Instagrammers in Syracuse that will go out to a restaurant when they get their check. They'll be like, but don't you know that I have this Instagram account and didn't you see I tagged you? So some of that, a little bit, not a lot of it, but a little bit of that exists in Syracuse. But we have a big following. We've got 16,000 followers. And so no restaurant in Syracuse, except for one, has ever reached out to us and said, if we give you this item or if we come in and invite you for dinner. Will you make a post about us?
Right.
The only ones that have done that has been Turning Stone.
But do you feel like maybe they don't know? Because I had no idea. I never knew you did that.
Well, I guess it's not that we do it for free that they should know. But like there's a thing like an Instagram influencer, right?
Right.
Okay. So that exists everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people they make millions of dollars and that's their career. It's just to go around and get paid to take pictures of people's places, right?
Yeah.
My point is that no one in Syracuse, like the restaurant community in Syracuse, doesn't know how to do that. They don't know.
They're not as savvy.
Right. They don't know to like, oh, this person has 10,000 followers. Maybe if I give them a dinner for free, they would make a post about me and I could reach their 10,000 followers. The first week of us being Eat Local New York State and following places in Rochester and Buffalo, I started getting calls and DMs like, hey, if I send you this 4-pack of beer, will you just make a post
like
about
immediately?
it? Immediately.
Oh, wow. Rochester too?
Yeah.
In Albany?
Yeah.
Wow.
So like yesterday, I got my wife texted me. She was like, "There's got a package here delivered to you at the house, but I had to show that I was 21. What did you order?" And I was like, "Oh, that was that beer that this brewery in Rochester DM'd and said, if we send you this 4-pack, will you make a post about it?" It's like, yes, I will gladly.
Wow. So you're saying us Syracuse folks are slow?
Yes.
Like too
That's
slow?
the point. Even myself included. This isn't everybody else. I'm also slow. I'm behind the times and stuff. But you know, that's really the difference.
The difference.
Like that's a good. I feel like that's a good analogy
Yeah.
of really what separates them. So, yeah. I mean, hopefully, I don't say that because I want more restaurants to start giving me free food. It's actually
sure.
That's actually one of the rules of our business is we in Syracuse we won't take free food. You know, we won't because we don't want to like I don't want that reputation of running around town and being like, hey, feed me for free and I'll make a post about you.
In some ways, it's not a really bad reputation.
It's
like you scratch my back, I scratch your back.
Yeah.
I actually was planning to bring you a banh mi, but I don't have any.
Yeah.
So my whole thing with banh mi right now is I have a problem finding someone to help me produce like Vietnamese baguettes locally.
Yes.
Okay. But fortunately, just yesterday I've been able to connect with Scratch.
Yeah.
And the baker there, Corey, dropped off some bread he just baked that's almost banh mi like.
Okay.
For me to test and see if it would work. And then he was so cool. And then he said, you know, if you need me to alter it or change it or fix it or whatever, you know, we can work on it. So it took a while because I tried bread baguettes from almost every single baker in Syracuse. Wow. And I got really sick just because I don't eat much wheat.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why I was feeling really sick for 2 weeks. My body was off, my system was off, my stomach just felt bloated all the time.
Yeah.
And I went to the doctor and everything, and you know they took scans and such, and they were like, well, we see this in your this and that, but I mean things I already knew, but there was nothing different, right? Okay. And then it hit me when my doctor said, have you been eating a lot of gluten? And my first response was, I don't eat gluten because I eat, you know, my diet's mostly rice-based, you know, so I eat a lot of rice, I eat a lot of rice noodles, you know, and if I eat American food, it's, you know, lots of salad and protein, right? So then my husband just laughed because he looked at me, he's like, have you forgotten for 2 weeks we've been eating bread every day, testing out your recipes? And then it hit me, I was like, holy crap, I've been eating so much baguettes. But it took me so long. I tried baguettes everywhere. I even went down to Ithaca and tried out Ithaca Bakery and their bread and everything like that. And finally, anyways, I am so thrilled that I've been able to connect with Scratch Bakehouse, and hopefully we'll find a recipe that works.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was planning to bring you some, but then I didn't have any bread that like the Vietnamese style bread.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was like, should I just use the Scratch bread and see if this works? But then I knew it wasn't exactly what I wanted yet.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, I'll just wait until because the folks I get the bread from is so Viếng Đông over on the north side.
Yes.
They've been around for more than 25 years.
Well, that's how you pronounce it, because I always pronounce it as Kai Dun.
Kai Dun?
Yeah.
Oh, no, you're talking about Ngoc Huynh. That's the cafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
But
talking
all they
about
have is like the 3 banh mi's.
banh mi's, yeah.
Right.
So they get their bread from Delario's.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's not banh mi like what we're
Yeah.
used to. It's too hard. Right?
Way too hard.
Yeah, but Vinh Dong, the grocery store over on Townsend. So there's a Vietnamese grocery store on Townsend called Vinh Dong.
Yeah.
There's another Vietnamese store over on Lodi called Tân Á.
Okay.
So they both get Vietnamese French bread from New York City or Philly.
Really?
Yeah. So, but since COVID, it's not regular. Like, before
Yeah.
they used to go every week and it's very consistent and you can get your bread the way you want it.
Yeah.
But now since COVID, I believe some of them only go every 2 weeks.
Okay.
Right. So he didn't have any more. I mean, like when I had my curbside takeout, he ordered 300 banh mi
Wow.
from New York for me. So, but what I don't like about it is that I can't get it fresh every day.
Right.
And I want something fresh every day. And
Yeah.
I actually really love Ithaca Bakeries. They had these demi baguettes, and they were really good. But they don't deliver to Syracuse. And they said, maybe we can meet you halfway. And I was like, no, I really want to go with someone local. And finally, Scratch.
Yeah, that's
Contacted
great.
me, and I met Corey, and I'm really excited because I really want someone local to produce my bread.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Who, so obviously besides your own, who has the best banh mi in Syracuse?
Well, I mean, that's kind of hard to say just because I feel like for most of us around here, we don't have the correct banh mi to begin with.
Okay.
Right. So all the banh mi's around, it's more just, how they season their meats or what they do with their meats. But I would agree. I mean, Ngoc Huynh's banh mi is pretty good in the sense that the seasoning's wonderful. Their pickled stuff is good.
Is that the one on the corner?
Yeah, the
okay.
one on the corner of Butternut and Salina.
How do you correctly pronounce it?
Ngoc Huynh.
Yeah, okay. So I call it Kai Din.
I know. I was like, what? Well, that's like totally different. Gai Dun and Ngoc Huynh
that
is like
is
totally
hilarious.
But I mean, when I was a student, I used to order there all the time just because it was the closest thing I can get.
Right.
I think some people don't order there because they say the banh mi is not right. Vietnamese people are very finicky about our French baguette. And we don't call it French baguette; we call it Vietnamese baguette.
Right.
Right.
Because a French, correct Vietnamese baguette is like this weird hybrid of like a French and an Italian, right?
Yes.
It's like supposed to be a little hard and crusty like a French baguette, but it's supposed to have that really like nice kind of soft texture
Airy inside
of an Italian.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard because what's hard about it is that it's a baguette in the sense that it's the crust is similar to a French baguette, right? But it's got that crunch.
Yeah.
But not too hard.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't want the crunch to be really hard. It's supposed to kind of be like crunch, not like crunch, And then the inside, the key to the inside, and I think this is where a lot of places don't measure up, is the inside is light and fluffy and very little dough.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much, if you go to Vietnam, Vietnamese banh mi is really, the inside is just a place to put all your meats and your vegetable. They don't care about the dough inside.
Yeah.
They don't want the dough inside.
Right.
So that's why the Vietnamese baguettes in Vietnam, the inside, there's very little dough.
Okay.
It just serves as a placement so you can spread your pate on it.
Gotcha.
And you can put all your meat and veggies in it. So it's so sometimes some of us here, what we do is we take all the dough inside and throw it out.
Yeah.
Or save it to make some other dish, right? And we just don't want it tons of dough inside. Yeah, so that is a true Vietnamese.
This is very
baguette.
interesting. I'm gonna reset these again just because I don't want to run out of time on the memory card before we get into the last part. That's so interesting. Listen, I know nothing about Vietnamese food.
But if you eat the banh mi and you like it and you have good taste.
So I love that banh mi. When I first actually, I'm just gonna change the battery as well.
Sure.
When I first had that banh mi, I had also watched the documentary called City of Gold, which is about Jonathan Gold, who was a food critic for the LA Times.
Mm-hmm.
He's since passed away, but he won the Nobel Prize for his food writing.
Oh, okay.
Very talented.
Cool.
And there's this famous road and street in Los Angeles. I forget the name of it, but it's like 10 miles long.
Vietnamese restaurants?
It's just.
Oh, it's called Bosa.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Bosa in LA.
So he had like spent an entire year going to and eating at every single one of those restaurants.
Every single one?
Every single one of them.
Oh my God. But you know the deal in LA though is if you have a shop and you're not good, you're out of business.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's so competitive. And also in LA, it's different than other places too because Vietnamese folks there, they specialize in whatever they're good at. Yeah. So let's say if they specialize in banh mi, that's all they sell is banh mi. And if they specialize in pho, that's all they sell is pho. Yeah. And that is exactly how it is in Vietnam. Okay. Like in Vietnam, you don't open a restaurant and have like 10 different items. Right. You sell like 1 or 2 items, but that's your best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so like when I first had that banh mi, I watched this documentary and he's known for his writing of like researching the hell out of all of these cultures and dishes and histories of, and you know, he had like deer penis was one of like the dishes he had at someone's restaurant. And so one of his famous articles and why people found him so relatable is because he would open up the review of, if you're like me, you've always found deer penis to be a little tough and stringy, you know, and so like no, like. But who else has ever had deer penis before? You know, right. Very few people, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I watched that documentary and then I went and had this banh mi, it's like, oh, I'm going to be like Jonathan Gold. I'm going to go research the history of the banh mi, you know? And I did for like 30 minutes one afternoon, and then all of a sudden I was an expert on banh mi. But I never knew there was another place in Syracuse that had a banh mi besides these, you know, like, the chef and the cook had a banh mi at one point, and it was awful, you know, like, you know, different things like that.
I mean, I know Noodle House, they have banh mi.
They do, and I don't know where they get their bread from. It's definitely a lot softer than, I'm not going to pronounce it, the other place, the cafe.
Gi. Let's say it together. Gi. Zui.
One more time.
Zui. Gi.
Gi.
Zui.
Z.
There you go.
Yeah, whatever.
Zui.
Okay.
Because it's Duyên, and anytime there's a D with a UY, it's not pronounced as a D.
Okay.
Just keep that in mind. If it's a D and there's a UY, then it becomes U instead of duh.
Okay. There we go. So. I took, I don't know if you know Anthony D'Onofrio, who used to be at Modern Malt.
I don't know him personally, but I know about him.
So he works at Gerhard's.
Oh, he does now. Okay.
Yeah. And he's been there for maybe 2 years. And so we'll go out to eat a lot for lunch and stuff, but we're always talking food.
Yeah.
And he had never been there for a banh mi. So I got them one day. And I was like, what'd you think? He was like, I loved it, except now my gums are bleeding. You know,
because it's hard.
It is really hard, crusty bread. Yeah.
Right.
And the Vietnamese Noodle House, it's definitely softer for sure.
Right. Yeah. So they actually, their bread, I know they get from Vinh Dong, who gets it from New York.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the challenges we both have is the fact that it's not fresh. So that's why you have to freeze it and then you let it thaw and then you bake it back up, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm assuming depending on how long it's been around, it could be more crunchy or less crunchy.
Right. For sure.
So, I mean, that's why I'm like, I got to find someone local. I need to find someone local.
So, I mean, how did this come about of you wanting to have a restaurant in the Salt City Market?
Actually, to be honest, I have never wanted to have a restaurant. Not interested at all. Well, mostly because growing up, my mom and my aunts and my uncles, they ran a cafe, right? And they also had like a catering business on the side. Okay. So they all had full-time jobs. You know, it was something our family did on the side for extra income, you know, because they came to this country and, you know, we didn't have anything and they all worked minimum wage jobs. Okay. So just imagine back then in the 80s, you're making $3 an hour and you're supporting a family of 3 or 4.
Wow.
So my mom, my dad, my aunts, my uncles, everyone typically always worked like 1 or 2 jobs. I mean, my dad growing up, I don't think my dad ever worked less than 2 or 3 jobs. Like he always had 2 or 3 jobs. So the cafe was a way for the family to make extra income, but then also, you know, like it was also a way to bring Vietnamese food that a lot of Vietnamese people missed. But at the time in Lincoln, Nebraska, there weren't any restaurants yet. Or very, you know, there were very few. I think at the time when my family opened the cafe, there was 1 Vietnamese restaurant in town. And I think my mom and my aunts, they just got really sick of like, you know, not having food that they grew up with. Yeah. Right. So luckily my mom is an incredible cook and she makes everything from scratch, you know, everything. Yeah. So what was funny was that it was actually a cafe billiard hall. Okay. Right. So it's, you know, Vietnamese people love billiards more than pool.
Really?
Yeah. So they would have, you know, tons of young guys who would come in and play billiards, and they didn't make money off of the fees from that. They banked it with all their food. Because my mom would make, you know, pho, she would make banh mi, she would make all the snickety snacky stuff that people love growing up in Vietnam. And it just went through, I mean, they just did really well with that. And I would help out at home. Pretty much we were like their taste testers, but we got so sick of eating stuff just because, you know, my mom would make the bao, like Vietnamese bánh bao is different from Chinese bánh bao. Okay. You know, it's bigger, it's, you know, the fillings are different, you know, the dough's slightly different. Okay. But my mom used to make like, you know, easily in one night, she'll make like 100 bánh bao. Wow. Right, to sell. But in the beginning, it was a lot of experimenting, just mostly because in Vietnam, they're used to certain tools, right? And they're used to also cooking on coals or wood, right? And the fire's different, you know, and then your ingredients are fresh and everything's, you know, here you kind of have to substitute what you don't have that would work best with this dish. So when my mom was experimenting with her bánh bao, us kids were the ones who were like, here, eat this, try this, eat this, to the point where I never, ever wanted to eat bánh bao ever again. So all her deformed bánh baos we would have to eat. And then she'd make, you know, the sesame balls, you know, and the ones that weren't good, we were like, you guys eat this. We're not throwing this away. You know, nothing was ever thrown away. And then, you know, she did the banh mi, she did the pho, everything. And so growing up around it, you know, I was always helping in some way, whether it's like chopping stuff or bringing things in or, you know, taste testing and stuff like that. So I was like, I don't ever want to have anything to do with a food business, you know, because I'm just not interested. Right. It's so much work. And then over the years, the thing about me is the fact that I love to eat, right? And I love to eat not just Vietnamese food, but I love to eat everything. You know, I love soul food. I love, you know, Mediterranean food. I love Italian food. I love everything. And I love trying everything and then finding places that are different or unique or they do something very special with a particular dish. Yeah. So I've always like been into the food scene in terms of like just, you know, trying everything out and going to places and, you know, tasting things. And I mean, it's crazy as it sounds. Sometimes my husband and I, like before, we would drive all the way up to Kingston and eat and then go home. Because at the time, there weren't many great Indian restaurants around here. Yeah. And there was a place in Kingston called the, what was it? The Indian, was it Doors or Cafes? I can't remember. But there was this wonderful Indian restaurant up there. And we would just drive up there and eat and then go home. Wow. You know? Or we would drive up to Toronto or we'll go to New York and eat, you know, and then spend a day there and then go home the next day. You know? Like we would do that often. And I think originally how it sort of started was Adam Sudman, who, you know, is the market manager for Salt City Market. He used to do these pop-ups called My Lucky Tummy, right? And I got to know Adam through a friend of mine, Julie, who is a good friend with his wife. Okay. So Adam, in the beginning, you know, he was trying to find out the food scene here. And, you know, he also like tapped into like a lot of the refugee community because, you know, they provided other types of food besides like, you know, what we currently have in Syracuse. And we would talk about food and things like that. But, he was like, hey, you should cook for one of my events. You should cook for my event. I was like, yeah. But I never did.
Yeah.
Mostly just because I had a full-time job. I had a kid. I was just so busy, and I really didn't have the time, And then one summer, I was home with my mom. And my mom makes this particular dish called blood sausage.
Okay.
Right? And she makes it from scratch, with using... fresh blood. I mean, like from the pig.
Yeah.
And we get it in Nebraska. Like, you can get fresh blood from the local farmers.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. Like, my mom do it all the time.
Yeah.
And because we have such a huge Vietnamese community, that fresh blood comes in daily. So you don't have to worry about fresh blood not being so fresh. Right. And so I went home that summer, and my mom made, it's called, it's blood sausage with all these spices and herbs in it. And then she makes it with a congee. And you eat it with all the organ parts of a pig.
Yeah.
Right? And it's so delicious. I mean, I know it sounds gross, but it's really delicious.
I'm sure,
right?
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because of all the herbs and spices and things in it,
Right.
it just tastes like a sausage with all these wonderful flavors in it, right? And so people, unless you knew it was blood sausage, you wouldn't even have an idea it's blood sausage, right? So I came back from my trip, and I was like, hey, Adam, guess what, my mom cooked. And I was telling him what it was. He's like, oh my gosh, that is so amazing. He's like, can you make that for my, for a Lucky Tummy event? And I was like, I don't know if I can make it, because I don't make it that often.
Right.
I know how to make it, but, I'd have to ask my mom. So I told my mom about it, and my mom's like, okay, I'm game. I'll come up and help you. I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So then the next challenge was finding fresh blood.
Right.
So Adam's just like, I don't know. Let's see. We'll talk to some local farmers. Anyways, but I actually tested out the recipe and went to the local Vietnamese stores.
Okay.
Right? And they have blood, but it's, it's like in the fridge, and it's
Yeah.
not so fresh. And then when I made it, it just didn't taste good because the blood wasn't fresh enough.
Yeah.
So it doesn't offer that like sweetness to it,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Adam went out of his way to find someone. Anyways, he found a farmer who said he can provide us the fresh blood, and it was all on the DL,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because he's like, I don't know if this would pass, like. But anyways, I was thrilled,
Yeah.
and my mom was so happy. So she flew out that weekend and helped me make it, and that's how it sort of started me doing food.
Wow.
And then Adam had another Lucky Tummy event, and he's like, why don't you do a dessert? And he's like, there's those green jelly looking thing. I see at the store. I bought it, but it doesn't taste so great. I'm sure you make it from scratch. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, are you talking about banya lung? Banya lung is like this dessert that's made with pandan leaves, and the inside is filled with coconut and mung beans, right? And so it looks like Jell-O, but it's not Jell-O,
Yeah.
right? So anyways, then the next thing for Adam, I was like, well, I can't make that dessert unless we have fresh pandan leaves, because the frozen one just won't taste good.
Yeah.
And he's like, fresh pandan leaves? Like, let me see what I can do. So he ended up getting some from New York. And have you ever smelled pandan leaves?
No.
You haven't? Oh my God. It's like, it smells so luxurious. It's incredible. It's like the Chanel of vanilla, right?
Wow.
So if you ever have fresh pandan leaves, like you smell it, it smells so good. It's pretty much like in Vietnam, we use it for a lot of desserts. It's like our version of vanilla,
Okay.
but it's better because it gives this amazing green color,
Yeah.
right? And it's natural, right?
Yeah.
So you're not using food coloring. So I made banya lung for the second Lucky Tummy event. And then from there, they needed another entrepreneur for With Love,
Yeah.
right? And then at first I was like, no, I really don't have time because I'm working. And even though at With Love at the time, they were like, you can come, share your recipes, show us how you make your food, but then you only have to be there part-time. Like you don't have to, at most like 10 or 12 hours, right? So
Yeah.
you're not going to have to be there all the time. And I was like, well, that might work. And then my husband and I were talking about it, and Frank was like, you know what? This is a way to test if you should do the restaurant business or not. And he goes, you might just hate it. You know, he's like, you're going to share your recipes, but you're going to run a little restaurant. You know, you're going to cook, you're going to do front of house, back of house. And then you're going to find out, like, maybe this is not for me.
Yeah.
He goes, it's either that or you might love it. And then we're really screwed. Right.
That's very true. Yeah.
Right? So I was like, okay. I was like, you know, it's 6 months commitment. I'll test it out.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. You know, I loved it mostly because I was making dishes that are pretty special to my family, because these are recipes that belong to my mom and my aunts and my grandma, and they were very southern. So my mom's from Jiayin, which is one of the cities in the Mekong Delta. Okay. And they, you know, their cooking is slightly different in the sense that Jiayin has a large Cambodian and Chinese population too. So our food is very mixed. Like it's Vietnamese, but we mix it with some of the Cambodian influences and Chinese influences. Yeah. So after my stint at With Love, I just really loved it. And I started finding myself, you know, at work thinking of recipes, you know. So then I was like, this is not good. And I told my parents about it, and they were just like, no, stick with your day job. You know, you've got benefits, you know, you've been there a while, you know, stick with your day job. Don't go. And I was like, yeah, it's a bit of a risk. Yeah. But when Salt City Market was recruiting, you know, Frank's like, oh, just try it. You know, you might not get in, you know, you never know, right? I mean, there's competitors, like tons of competitors. Yeah. So I was like, okay, you know, I'll fill out an application and participate and do this and that. And I, you know, I got selected, and then I really loved the people who participated. Yeah. I mean, like my competitors, like Sarah with Firecracker Thai Kitchen, and, you know, Latoya from Irma's Island, and Yuying from Cake Bar, and a handful of other folks. They were just really wonderful people. Yeah. I love their food. I love them as human beings, and we bonded quite a bit. And I think that's the thing about folks in the restaurant industry. Like, you're all doing the same type of work, and you really, you know, like it's like I don't know. It's kind of weird to say, but I'm used to working at a newspaper, and there's a lot of camaraderie in the newsroom. You know, like, you know, editors help you with your stories, fellow colleague reporters, you know, kind of give you tips on, you know, where to find information. And especially like when we work on an election night, everyone just comes together and just bang it out, and, you know, and you just feel great. And I feel like the restaurant industry has that, but in a different way, right? It doesn't revolve around news, but it revolves around food. Right? And also another thing too is, like, you know, in the restaurant industry, you have people who eat your food and they might love your food and rave about it, and then you have people who complain and don't like you and then give you such a hard time. I mean, it's the same thing in the newspaper industry. You have readers who love stories and call and compliment, and then you have readers who are like, what were you thinking? Like, why are you writing that? And, you know, calling you out on stuff. So it's, you know, it's definitely two different professions, but in some ways they are similar in a sense that you're dealing with people. Right. Yeah. So
I love that.
Yeah. So my parents now, they're like, you're crazy. You are out of your mind, you know. And my mom, one day, she teared up, and she was just like, your dad and I worked so hard, you know. Dad always had like 2 or 3 jobs, you know. I had the cafe, and then I had the job, and, you know, we worked so hard to make sure you guys all go to college, and now you want to do food? What is wrong with you? You know, and I think it was really hard for me to respond. At first, I didn't have anything to say to her, because I felt bad. But then it clicked, because I said to my mom, I was like, wait a minute, Mom, you know, I am doing this because I want to do this, right? It's a choice. It's my choice to make. You and Dad didn't have a choice. You didn't have a choice when you worked those long hours at a factory, you know. You didn't have a choice when you wanted to go to college and pursue a degree and, you know, do better. You didn't have a choice. You took certain jobs to support the family and to make us, you know, make it affordable for us so we can go to college and so on. And so I went to college. I had a career, and now it's my choice to choose what I want to do. So in some ways, I feel like you shouldn't feel bad, Mom, because you are giving your daughter an opportunity to make a choice to do what she wants. And that is something you and my dad and all my aunts and uncles didn't have, right? So to me, it's not like a horrible decision. It's definitely a risk-taking decision. But I guess I'm at an age where I'm like, what else do I want to do?
Right.
Do I want to do the same thing I've done for years, or do I want to do something I'm actually really, really passionate about?
How old are you?
You really want to know?
As Woody Allen would say, how many birthdays have you had?
How old do you think I am? Take a guess.
Well, to be quite honest, from your picture, and this, I don't mean this to sound bad, but from your picture on the website for the Salt City Market, I thought that I was meeting like a 60-year-old woman who's been like in the restaurant industry for her entire life.
A 60-year-old?
I legitimately thought that.
Wow, I must look really young for 60-year-old. Don't you think?
Yeah, you definitely look young.
I am 45 this year.
No, you're not.
Yes,
Are you kidding me?
am.
Meeting you, I would have guessed now like in your late 20s, early 30s. Holy cow. Wow.
Yeah. So it's, I think when you're in your 40s,
Yeah.
you're at that age where you're like, okay, what's next?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I love my journalism career, it's like, I'm going to retire on this.
Yeah.
Which is hard these days because, not
Right.
like newspapers or TV
for
stations
sure.
stay in business for a long time. But I feel like, life is very short.
Yeah.
And I think everything I've been through, when my cousin passed away recently, my grandfather died last year and he was 103.
Wow.
I just felt like, sometimes opportunities come your way.
Yeah.
And if you don't grab it, you regret it.
Yeah.
So I feel like everything kind of lined up perfectly. And it's
Yeah.
also another way for me to really preserve my family's recipes.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be writing a bunch of this shit down.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it was just like always like word of mouth, and just, pinch
Yeah.
here, dash here. But now I actually have to like write it down, and I love food. And I'm sure you're the same way in a sense that if you love to eat something, you want everyone else to try it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's, with quarantine, I was cooking a lot more, but I was like calling my dad even and saying like, hey, what's that barbecue sauce recipe, and getting him to send it to me.
Yeah.
And making that, I was thinking to myself, my parents are in their like mid to late 60s. And I was thinking to myself, like, there's going to be one day that they're not going to be around, and who's going to have Dad's barbecue sauce recipe?
Right.
And my mother made a recipe book of like my grandmother's recipes, and they gave them to everybody in the family one year. But, I was just thinking like, I do need to kind of hold on to some of this stuff. And, I'm 30, I'm going to be 34 next month. And
You're a baby.
Yeah. And we still don't have kids, or anything like that. My wife's 31.
You can have kids later.
Right.
You're a man. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. I've never wanted to be like the 60-year-old dad at graduation, though. But our plan is to move into a new home in the spring and then start at that point. Yeah. But thinking about like things that I've wanted, it's like you're getting older. I mean,
Right.
I'm still have plenty of life ahead of me, but you're still getting older, and so it's like, all right, now time is kind of becoming more sensitive as you get older. It's like
It is.
you have to choose, and some of the things you thought that you were going to do, maybe you're not going to do now. I thought one day I was going to, be a very wealthy millionaire and I could live wherever I wanted
Off of
to.
mattress.
Exactly. off of that mattress store behind Pier 1 Imports. Yeah. But now I've kind of come to the realization that's probably not going to happen. Maybe one day I'm not going to have a, luxury apartment in New York City and a mansion in Hawaii and a place in Los Angeles.
Hey, when you're young, you got to dream big.
Exactly.
Right. Because then you work hard to try to get to that dream.
Right.
And if you're young and you don't have dreams, then
Yeah.
what's the point?
Now I'm just looking for free food from Buffalo and Rochester restaurants. Yeah.
So funny.
Well, thank you so much for coming down here. It really was a pleasure. I love talking to you, and almost hour and 15 minutes. It was a great
Sorry, it
conversation.
took up so much of your time.
No, that was great. Yeah. And where can they follow you on Facebook for your restaurant?
Just mamahigh.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. And
And
you're on
also-
Instagram and Facebook.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. So,
Sweet. Well, thank you so much.
thank you.